Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I originally shot a video of me working on the background that I was going to create for my next video, but I ran into some problems that I want to discuss in this one in case you have similar issues, and then I might possibly have to transition to another program to create the background. I still do the animation in Blender, but this problem, at least for my workflow, is something I'm not sure I can get comfortable with enough to create the background like I want. So I'm just going to quickly go over what these issues are and then provide some demonstrations of the issues and what's causing it and why it may be a problem for creating the look I want to create in Blender Grease Pencil. Okay, so in the last video, I talked about how I've turned off post-processing so I can get the most points on my line work, which should help with using the cutter tool and using the erase tool. So if you didn't watch that video, I'll just quickly go over this. So I'm going to turn post-processing on, and I've got the pencil tool, and I've got the strength to 1 and the pen pressure is turned off. So I'm going to draw a line with post-processing on. I'm going to go back to stroke and turn off post-processing. I'll draw another line. Then we'll go to edit and highlight these. And you can see how that works. So on the top line with post-processing on, Blender is trying to create the line you drew using the least amount of points possible. So the problem with this is if I go back to draw mode and I use the erase tool, I want to erase in points. See, I can't erase this part right here because there are no points. So if I change it to soft erase and erase in there, that doesn't work either because there's no points to erase. If I go back to the points eraser and I start erasing, see how well that works here? That's because I have a lot of points. If I go back to this one and do that, watch, it will start jumping between points. So you can't erase cleanly while using the post-processing. So as an example, I'm going to draw a line straight down. So say I want to erase these to create a corner. Well, if I go to the erase tool and I start erasing here, see I can't erase there, I've got that, but I can't erase this line. And then if I do get to a point and erase it, then I get a gap. And that works here, but even sometimes, like if I get up to that, it's not doing it now, but sometimes it'll leave like a little tail there because it didn't quite have enough points to erase. You can see I would have something like that. And cleaning that up is kind of hard. You can go back to edit mode and then grab it and move the point so that it's even with that line. But if you're doing a lot of lines, that's very time consuming and not very precise. So that's one issue I'm running into that I don't like, that if I overshoot a line, which is how I like working on backgrounds, and overshooting is if I just want to keep going and then come to that point and then want to erase back. So it looks okay there, but I'm having issues sometimes getting this little point sticking over. So that's one problem I've got, and I just can't figure out a way to make the eraser work as well as it does in other programs. And I know this probably has something to do with the Blender strokes being vectors, which is made up of points. So that's something that I can't seem to figure out a good way around. So I'm going to edit mode, highlight all these and delete them. Back to draw mode. The other issue I want to talk about is drawing in perspective. So how I typically do that is I select the draw tool, and then up here in guides, I'm going to click that to turn it on. So I'm going to just quickly make a hallway scene like this one. And if I did this hallway scene by hand, it would work fine. So for an example, I'm going to turn on this horizon line. I'm going to click on Grease Pencil object, and then I want to draw the two vertical lines to make up the edges of the hallway. So to do that, I'm going to go to Grid. I'm just going to quickly draw these two lines, and Grid lets you draw horizontally and vertically, and that's it. So here's my areas here. So then I'm going to draw in perspective. So this cursor will be my vanishing point. And then I want to change guides to radial. And you can see if I go to radial, cursor is selected as the reference point. So that means everything I draw will go to that reference point, which is what we want for 1 point perspective. So see how it's drawing to that point. Let me undo that and I'll stop at the cursor. And then I'll draw another one here. And then this will be the wall here. You don't have to come all the way to the cursor because we're going to cut these off. So I'm going to turn off that horizon line. So you can see we have our walls, and we could erase this with the eraser tool, but again, I might get those tails, kind of like that. So then to clean this up, sometimes you get in here and you accidentally hit the line that's for the wall and you erase some of that like that. So the best option for this type of work is the cutter tool. So I'll click on the cutter tool. And before I show the issue, I want to show you how it should work. So I'm going to turn off this grease pencil object. I'm going to go to object mode, hit Shift A, go to grease pencil, blank. So now I've got a new grease pencil. I'm going to drag it up here to the collection. And I'm going to turn off guides. So I'm going to go back to draw, select the draw tool, turn off the guides. So say I was drawing this by hand. I want to turn back on the horizon line, and I know my vanishing point is that cursor. So I can draw this by hand. So let me do a straight line here, a straight line here. Well, let me undo that. Straight line here, straight line here. So I know this cursor is my vanishing point, so I can draw that up, that. Okay, now I'll turn off the horizon line. So see how wavy everything is? You could turn on stabilize stroke if you wanted to. But if I'm just freehanding it, this is how you would draw in one point perspective, assuming the cursor is your vanishing point. So if I select the cutter tool and I circle these, you can see that cuts it right there at that line. It looks good. There's no leftover. I do the same thing for here. See, that didn't work right. That didn't either. So let me see if this works better if I go back and do these first. Yeah, so there's our line. Let me draw one more here so you can get an idea of the hallway. Okay, it's very jittery looking and rough, but you get the idea. So I've got this in one point perspective. But I really want my lines to be a little more perfect and easier to put in. So that's why I want to use the guides. But you see the cutter tool worked well for this. And I don't have any stragglers where the lines come together or anything like that. So if I turn this off and go back to my other one, this is the one created with the guides on. So if I try to use the cutter tool on this, you can see it's not working on any of these intersections. Okay, I had some technical difficulties with Blender, so I'm back now. I've got a new grease pencil object. So I'm going to go back to draw mode. I have the draw tool. I'm going to turn guides on. I'm on radial, which means I'm drawing in one point perspective with the cursor as my spot. So I'm going to draw in some lines. I'm going to change this over to grid, and I'm going to draw in some horizontal lines. Okay, now if I go to, and just to confirm, I had post-processing off. So I'm going to go to edit mode and select all of this. And you can see we have lots of points. So I'm going to go back to draw mode. So we have plenty of points. The line intersections look just like the one I did by freehand. So if I go to the cutter tool, see, it's not cutting down to that intersection like it did when I was drawing it freehand. See, it cut that off weird, even though I know there's a ton of points there. I'm going to do that. It cut that off some of it, but not all of it. And it did that one fine. So even if I cut right down to that intersection, it doesn't work. So I'm not sure why the cutter tool is not working when you use guides to create the lines, even though the lines have just as many points as the lines I drew freehand. So as an example, see that's not working. If I go back to the pencil tool and I turn off guides, Do this again. Then I go to the cutter tool. See, it works just fine on these, but not on these. And if I go to edit mode and I highlight them all, you can see they all have plenty of points. So I'm not sure why that's not working, but that's a problem because one of the easiest ways to draw in perspective is to overshoot those lines and then go back and clean them up. And again, I could do that with the erase tool, but sometimes it's fairly inaccurate as well. I'll probably research this a little more, but so far I've not been able to find a solution to these two problems. One, the inaccuracy of the eraser tool, at least how I want to use it. And then two, while the cutter tool isn't working with lines drawn with the guides function, but are with freehand drawing, even though the lines look exactly the same when you go to edit mode. So I just want to share that information with you. And if anybody watching this has some insight on this, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. And in the next video, I'm not sure if I want to continue with using grease pencil for this, at least the background. I would still use it for the animation. For the background, I may have to transition to Toon Boom Harmony or some other drawing program, maybe Krita. Since it's not animated, it can just be a flat image. I don't necessarily need it in Blender. I can use Blender for the camera movements and the other little bit of animation I'll be doing. But if I can't get this to work the way I need it to work, or at least the way my workflow works, I probably will have to transition to something else. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and hopefully it brought some attention to problems others may be experiencing, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.